We're here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. because we want to grow you as a defender.
The defender seeks the challenge of standing up for what's morally and ethically right and is willing to step forward and put themselves in harm's way because they believe that sacrifice and love is the way to do things.
And what we mean by that is that you can grow as a good shooter, but what we're really here for is to help you grow personally as a defender. We know that personal growth and shooting growth go hand in hand, and we want to work to help you become better people in your lives, in your everyday lives, and that's going to translate to your shooting on the range. So that's what we're here for. Hello, everyone. It is December 28th, 2022, and you're watching Defenders Live with Laura Thorson. Thank you so much for attending tonight. We have a special episode planned for you tonight, and I cannot wait to get started. So if you are new or watching this as a replay, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And while you guys are all coming on the live stream, please put in the comments where you're watching from. We love to hear from you, and please continue to post those comments throughout the live. At the end of the live, if we have time, we will be doing a Q&A session with our special guests. Now, as always, Adam Winch from Defenders USA is behind the scenes and helping me. He may jump on, he may not, we never know, but he is here with us as well. And I also want to invite you guys that if you find value in these live streams, please invite others to join the Defenders Live Facebook group. If you're a member of that Facebook group, please invite others to join it. That really will help others find value as well, because that is where you will find all of the up-to-date information on Defenders Live, as well as clips throughout the week of the highlights of our live streams. Okay, and so let me move on here, and I want to give a warm welcome to our friends and partners of Defenders Live.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, Adam Winch with Defenders USA. I want to tell you about some of our friends and sponsors. I'm a brand ambassador with H&K Firearms. I carry a VP9 from H&K in Defensive Life. I use it on the range. I use it in training. This is my go-to gun. I highly recommend the VP9 from H&K. Next, Iron American. You can see this bottle here or the one that's hanging off my range bag in front of the camera. That's what I use for liquid chalk on the range. There's also a discount code through Defenders USA that you can get some, and I'd strongly encourage you to order some liquid chalk from Iron America. Next, my gun is carried in a Haven Defense Co. holster. You can find them at havendefenseco.com, Haven Defense Co. You can see their brown leather patch on the front of the bag. And then, of course, there's a Defenders USA patch. You can come to training and try to earn that patch, too, from Defenders USA.
All right, I see you guys are starting to chime in. So I see Scott is here from Fort Worth. Hello, Scott. Let's see. Tori's here tonight. I don't know where he is. Indianapolis, it looks like. So we've got some people here from Arizona, and Catherine from Michigan is back. People from Arkansas. This is so exciting, guys. I love this. These live streams are so much fun. I love connecting with all of you, and looks like Juan is here as well. Hello, Juan. Good to see you tonight. All right, well, let's move on here. I do have a quick tidbit of the week this week before we bring our special guest on, John McLaughlin with Iowa Firearms Coalition. So stay tuned for that. But really quickly, this is something that I'm changing gears on just a little bit. The tidbit of the week this week is called Doing Hard Things. So as we talk about getting uncomfortable and doing hard things on this channel in order to foster growth and self-reflection in our lives, we as instructors, we talk about tuning into our students' emotions and comfort zones in order to know just the right amount of push or pull or backing off that we might need in order for them to develop the way that works best for them, right? Because what's hard for one person might not be the same for another person. And I've learned a valuable lesson lately about doing hard things that I want to share with you. Now, hang in here with me, guys. It's a little bit different, but it's a little bit different take than I normally would talk about. But I think it's really important. So I can't be the only one, but in the past couple of months, for me have been a little bit challenging. I've admittedly allowed myself to kind of slide sideways into the holiday season. Can anybody else relate to that? Creating a practical food coma on Christmas Day and then not feeling very good afterwards, having sort of a Christmas hangover in some ways, and just kind of allowing myself to slack in many areas, personally, really, not work wise, but personally. And was it all worth it? No, not really. The Christmas cookies were good, but they really weren't worth they weren't worth how I felt afterwards, right? And there comes a point, at least for me, where I just get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Can anyone else relate? You just get to this point where you can only tolerate so much. And so I got back on the horse recently, and little by little, I've been getting back to being the me that I enjoy being. A little bit healthier, a little bit more active, and that all translates to a happier me and a happier people around me too, right? So for those of you out there who also struggle with this, because I know I'm not the only one. In fact, I might be preaching to the choir, right? I want you to think about doing something hard, but not in the way that many of us have been taught. I want you to take a look at your values and your beliefs. How do you define yourself? What is your identity? How you identify yourself will ultimately dictate your thoughts and your behaviors. Now, let's just say on an imaginary scale of 1 to 10, you tell yourself all the reasons why you will never be a 10. Okay. And I don't mean a 10 in how you look, guys. I mean in 10 and whatever that is to you, whether that's being, really successful in life. Maybe that's being the best father you can be, or the best mom you can be, or the best, spouse, or whatever that looks like to you. Right. You listen to others who tell you the same thing, that you can never be that, and you believe it for whatever reason. You will perpetually be stuck at that level or lower, at a 5 or lower, because you will unconsciously and consciously live your life at that lower level. So let's say you think of yourself as a 5 level because you grew up that way, and every person in your family is that way, and so on and so on. And somehow through circumstance, you level up to a 10, let's say, okay? And you become wildly successful, or whatever 10 looks like to you. If you're still in a 5 mindset, you will sabotage yourself and end up right back where you were to begin with, because your values and your beliefs didn't align with that. Are you picking up what I'm putting down here, guys? Is this making any sense? So this is all in theory, but I hope you understand what I'm getting at. I'm not saying that you can think your way to a 10, right? For a virtual 10, not at all. You cannot think your way into anything, but your thoughts and your beliefs are where everything else in your life stems from, which is your behaviors and your actions, right? So here's a hard thing for you to contemplate tonight. Ask yourself, what do you really believe about yourself? What do you really believe about yourself? Do you believe you're the type of person who procrastinates because it's an excuse you've made in the past, and so now, well, that's just who you are? Do you believe that you're never going to achieve XYZ, and you have just resolved that that's just the way it is because of these reasons? And well, I guess I'll just live that way because I don't know what else to do. I don't know what to do any differently, right? In talking about doing hard things are not always about lifting heavy things, gritting your way through life, being the tough guy or the tough gal, or always being the strong person. The hard things are usually the internal conflicts, the quiet vulnerability that we resist because it's just too uncomfortable. So we keep ourselves busy with less important things. It's the difficult conversations we avoid having because we don't want to be truthful, and we're fearful about how that conversation could go. Or it could be the honest conversations with ourselves about being truly honest about the excuses we make and the lies we tell ourselves. And the lies you tell yourself can be very powerful, but only if you aren't aware they're a lie and you actually buy into them. And hey, I'm not lecturing at all here, guys. I've bought into plenty of lies. We all have, right? I've been down this path and I struggle with all these things. That's why I'm bringing this up, because this is on my heart tonight. So perhaps those lies are instead disguised or even stem from fear. One of my favorite songs is called Fear is a Liar by Zach Adams. And I would love for you to look it up and listen to it because the lyrics are very powerful. I really strongly encourage you to look that up. So, in closing, what do you truly believe about yourself? Think about that. Truly. As defenders, we train to do hard things that others may not even want to think about. If we can do that, let's also not be afraid to do the hard work within ourselves. All right, so that's tonight's tidbit of the week, and let's move on to our special guest, John McLaughlin from Iowa Firearms Coalition. So John is the chair of Iowa Firearms Coalition, a firearms instructor, current FAA instructor, and former meteorologist in Central Iowa for over 30 years. John's underlying mission of helping protect and prepare people is woven throughout his life experiences. Join me as we talk about John's incredible story of perseverance, life lessons in unexpected places, and above all, his unwavering dedication and heart to serve others. Without further ado, let's bring on John McLaughlin. Hi, John. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I was just humming Fear is a Liar in my head. So good choice there to start this out.
Isn't that a great song?
It is indeed.
Yeah, I
So
was
true.
running to that song actually this morning, and there's just the lyrics are just so powerful. So I hope you guys do look that up.
Yeah, I'll jump in here a second. I appreciate the message leading into this, and I understand you're going to be doing the active self-protection instructor course coming up. Is that a true rumor?
Yeah, that's starting in January.
Great. So one of the books they had us read, I don't know if they still do, but when Adam and I went through, is a book by Lanny Basham called With Winning in Mind.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that book.
It's exactly what you're just talking about, developing that self-image of what you want to be, what you want to look like, and how to just develop that mental management system of getting where you need to be and, blocking out the extraneous stuff. So I think you'll really enjoy going through the course, and it changed how I teach, and I think you'll appreciate that too. So back to you now.
Wow, I'm looking forward to it even more now. That's great. I can't wait. I hope that book is still part of the curriculum. So we'll see. I'm sure it is. I've heard that book title over and over again. All right. Well, John, not everyone knows you, so I would love if you wouldn't mind just sharing. I tried in the intro to share a little bit about your background, but I would love to hear it in your words, if you don't mind, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, I'm just an Iowa kid. Grew up in Western Iowa. I understand you were in Creston for a while, so I was about an hour north of there in Carroll, Iowa, and went to school at Iowa State and then on to Mississippi State University. So I've got plenty of college. Spent 31 years in Des Moines for the CBS affiliate as their meteorologist. Spent a lot of time doing severe weather, covering tornadoes across Iowa, and almost 20 years speaking at conferences, writing peer-reviewed papers on Doppler radar and severe storms. So a heart really geared toward protecting the folks in Iowa against severe weather. Kind of at the same time, I ran a company in Iowa with a friend of mine that was called Learn to Shoot Iowa, where we focused on taking people well beyond just getting their concealed carry permit, trying to give them some very solid training, a good foundation in firearms, more than just firing 25 shots and take this to the sheriff and get your permit. And then also ran a company in Iowa called Iowa Helicopter, where we did helicopter training tours, flew volunteer stuff for the police department when we'd have an Alzheimer walk away or something like that. And currently no longer in TV because of an illness. Developed what was called sarcoidosis, which is an autoimmune disease. And so retired from television, which is what I thought I would do my whole life, but still do check rides for the FAA for folks in airplanes and helicopters, still teach firearms on the side when needed. And the last several years, my focus, as you mentioned, has been chair of a volunteer org in Iowa called the Iowa Firearms Coalition. And our focus has been over the last almost 10 years, getting a constitutional amendment approved in Iowa to actually recognize and protect the Second Amendment. And finally, after a lot of effort and moving from May issue to shall issue to constitutional carry. Then just last month in November, we got the issue passed. So the Second Amendment now fully protected in Iowa. So even if our national scene changes with government, Iowa still has it on their constitution. And we prize our liberties, and we will protect them in Iowa.
Wow, that is a lot, John. That is incredible. I mean, think about what you've accomplished, since you first started your career to what you're doing now. There is an underlying theme when you think about it. There is a parallel to all of these things. And I do
It
believe it's
is.
about protecting others, is it not?
It's definitely I've had that as long as I can remember, a heart for protection.
Mhm.
Throughout my entire career in meteorology, the thing I preached all the time is, we don't wait for the National Weather Service to issue a warning. If we see something on the radar, if we see a threat that is going to hurt somebody, we're on the air instantly and talking about that. And I would tell my crew at the TV station, you don't wait. If you see something, you go on the air and tell someone, because I do not want in my career to have some family call me and say, my loved ones died because you weren't there.
Mm.
And unfortunately, in Iowa over the years, we did have loss of life in tornadoes and severe storms. But with one rare exception, I've never had anybody come up and say, hey, you really missed that storm. It hit our house. Something horrible happened. And
Mhm.
the only time that ever did happen is my manager at the time had come into the TV station and said, John, you've been on the air long enough. And I said, no, this is a dangerous storm. We have to stay on. And he goes, no,
Mm.
Oprah is starting at 4 o'clock. We have to go to Oprah. And so they went to Oprah, cut away from our radar coverage. And there was a bar in Southeast Iowa where everybody in the bar was watching our TV station. And they thought, oh, they've just cut away. They're back to programming. There must not be a threat. About 2 minutes later, the tornado hit that bar and killed 2 people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So my
Wow.
boss said after that, I will never question the meteorologist again. If you guys need to be on the air, you're on the air. And we had a run of being number one in weather, and one of those rare TV stations where you just got to do exactly what the meteorologist thought needed to be done
Mhm.
in severe weather. So it was a really great career for 30 years.
And could you speak to, the mindset, because as a pilot and as a defender and even as a meteorologist, to be frank, there's a certain preparedness mindset that all three of those require. And so is there anything that you've learned in any of the other professions, a pilot or meteorologist, that can be applied to the daily preparedness of a defender?
Absolutely. I started teaching firearms in the early 2000s. One of the common things we would hear, especially from law enforcement or ex-military, you're a TV guy. What do you know about, self-defense and teaching firearms? I said, well, I'm also a pilot examiner. I let people try to kill me for a living. And in the helicopter world, if you have a failure, especially in some of the smaller helicopters, the difference between life and death in an engine failure is about 1.7 seconds. So if you lose your rotor RPM that's spinning over your head, that decays at about 10% per second. And you get down around 82, 83%, you're not coming back. So that's about 1.7
Wow.
seconds. So the same thing a cop endures under fire, the same thing the military, the time standing still, the audio exclusion, uh, all that stuff happens in emergencies in aircraft. So my goal is to
Mhm.
teach people, just like I do in firearms, to reach that unconsciously competent stage where everything's been myelinated through the neural pathways and you can instantly react, put shots on target, or in the helicopter world, get the collective down, F cyclic right pedal, enter the auto rotation, and then good chance of having a positive outcome. So, and even in the weather world, it was all, that left of bang kind of stuff we study, knowing what you're
Mhm.
looking for, seeing it, recognizing it before it can kill you, and letting folks know about it.
Yeah, and doesn't the airline industry have a really strict protocol about your mental state before you pilot an airplane, and talk you through, being honest with yourself about that self-awareness? I think that
Yeah,
should be applied to the everyday carrier as well, because you're not in the same frame of mind mentally, or you're
yeah,
feeling not very well one day maybe or something. I mean, how could that be applied as well?
yeah, absolutely. On every check ride I do, whether it's airplanes or helicopters, the applicants have to talk to me about risk mitigation, and the FA has all kinds of acronyms. One of them is I Am Safe, where we go through illness, alcohol, medication, stress, fatigue, external factors, emotions, and all that applies to the handgun world. If I tell people in a real world emergency, you're going to degrade to about 50%. So you don't want to start the day at 70% of your ability, and then today's the day that you have the real world emergency, and suddenly you're reduced by half. Now you're only 35% as good as you should be on a perfect day. And so think of that. If you're going into a hazardous environment, you don't want to be mentally deficient. Maybe didn't get a good night's sleep, maybe didn't even eat breakfast, argument with the spouse. All those things will impact you very negatively when your moment is called.
Yeah, so important, and I don't think something that gets talked about a lot, so I wanted to bring that up.
Especially the stress and fatigue part. That's where we see the biggest breakdowns of folks. They've missed a night of sleep, or they're stressed because they're taking a check ride or doing an evaluation, and boy, you can see it. And folks don't recognize it till it happens, and then they say, what you talked about, I degraded in stress. I saw that, and I said, yes. When you do a check ride, that is really how you're going to prepare, or you're going to handle yourself in an emergency. So it gives us an insight into the pilot's mind in this case of how they will perform when the chips are down.
Right. Now, can we talk a little bit about church security and medical training? Because I know those are two specific areas that you're pretty passionate about, that you're involved in. For the folks out there that might have questions, perhaps, about church security and approaching their own churches about the need for that. How can one go about that?
Yeah, that church security, school security, it's all very close to my heart. It's something I've been involved in, especially since getting out of the television industry in 2016. So while I was doing TV and running the firearms company on the side, we started an outreach called Faith, Fellowship, and Firearms, the 3 Fs. And what we wanted to do was take the biblical example of discipleship and then take people and use that as the example of training them in firearms. So we ended up with a group of about 18 people that spent the summer basically learning how to be a disciple and then transferring those skills to, okay, how can I teach somebody firearms, or what can I do to instill these values in someone to be a church defender? And so we took people with virtually zero knowledge of firearms, and by the end of the summer, they were very highly capable. And so we can, take the model of what Christ did disciple-wise and apply that to, training these church security individuals. So it's more than just sending them to a school for a couple of days or something. It's pouring yourself into them, watching them, mentoring them, giving them advice, keeping them positive through the process. And then we culminated that summer. We went out to a 4-day class in Nevada and got together and had a great time and did the shoot house and all that kind of stuff. But that really got me focused on, building a team. So after I left the TV industry, started spending the winters down in Arizona, got affiliated with a church down here, and was able to work with them, eventually led their Saturday team security for until about a year ago. And then I had to step away from that because of some medical things with my youngest son. And anyway, it's very close to my heart. I help an organization that's called Faith-Based Security Network, fbsnamerica.com. And a guy named Carl Chin, he's a Colorado person, and he was involved in he focused on the family hostage situation. I think that was back in the 90s, and then later the Colorado Springs New Life church shooting. He was part of that security team. Anyway, he started that organization, so kind of helped him get going with some communication software, and it's a great organization. I highly recommend that if you have folks that are building a church team and need plans or mentorship. It's a good, solid organization to affiliate yourself with.
So, John, I want to jump in here first. I want to jump in here for a second here. You're talking about the Faith-Based Security Network, which I'm a huge fan of, right? What Carl Chin and others have done. Yep. I think it's just fantastic. You brought up something about, arming and helping train those who decide to do so. I'd like to get your observations. But something I've noticed on this is if you even look back at the Bible, right? Even Christ himself basically armed 20% of his followers, of his 12 disciples, right? He even said, hey, at least 2 of you sell your cloak if you have to get the defensive weapon of the era. which in that case of the day was the sword, right? The knife, the sword, the lance. So taking that concept, bringing it into the modern era, my thought on this is that even in our churches, right, some of us are called to certain different tasks, have different gifts, whether it's preaching, whether it's working in the nursery, whether it's something. I think that we as Christians have some of us have a ministry within the church itself as being the defenders of life within church. That doesn't mean the whole church should be armed, the entire everything, but for those who decide to do so, getting that willful training like you're talking about, going out and studying this and preparing for the defensive life within the church itself is important. And because you mentioned it, can you dive a little bit deeper in there? Right, that's something I think is such an important component that we all need to think about. And man, I'd love to just keep digging this hole with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was really on my heart. And when I was in Des Moines for all the years, I attended a very large church and actually reached out to the staff there and said, we get literally thousands of people over a weekend that are coming in here, and they really didn't have an interest in a formed team. So we just kind of organically did things underneath the radar that they didn't even know about. But what I would tell people out there is it's definitely easiest to move this ahead at a smaller community type church with a couple hundred members, but you have to get the pastor's buy-in, and you have to have them know that this is a legitimate ministry. Whether you want to call it church security or safety and security or life team ministry, whatever you want to call it, it is a legitimate ministry. People, the warriors like yourself and Laura, we have that within ourselves to step into harm's way. And that doesn't mean that we're always out there, looking to get into a battle. It could be as simple as, I'll give you a quick instance. The pastor's kid fell and split his knee open. Well, who do they call? They call the security guy. Boom. We're over there putting the steri strips on, saving the day just for little things like that. We're walking around the parking lot when it's 115 degrees and checking the cars and talking to a lady that was in her car. And I said, why are you here? There's a service going on inside. And it's, well, my husband's in the hospital down the road and I didn't know what to do. It looks very bad. So I just decided to drive to a church. So I opened the door and thought, would you like to go inside? Or I said, I can pray with you right here. And she goes, would you? And so we did. We prayed in the parking lot on a miserable hot day. And she goes, why are you out here? Do you guys just walk around looking for old women to pray with? And I said, yeah, essentially that's what we do. So you have to have that heart. And a friend of mine, Stephen, who worked here in Arizona in the winter for a while and has moved on now. But, every day we would start our team meetings with that we are missionaries first and gatekeepers second. We love people until they give us a reason not to.
Yes. Yeah. Love continuously, but defend if you need to, which is another component of love.
Yep.
Well, thank you. I'll jump back in, Laura.
I'll give you another quick story from the church world. Had a guy that came on campus and was hanging out by the where the kids go out and play in a gated nursery area. And he had a bag, so it looked like alcohol or something. And so we went, we had a little conversation with him, and he made it very clear that he was armed with a knife and that he was very good. In fact, he had 3 knives and that he could get to us. And the little guy next to me, who was a jiu-jitsu guy, so I wasn't really concerned about him. He called him a fire plug or something. I said, I'm pretty sure my 9mm is faster than your knife. But anyway, we had a conversation, and I said, you need to go home. You need to get rid of the alcohol, get rid of your knives, and you should consider coming back to church and just listening. Well, that guy ended up coming back the next week. I babysat him, sat next to him. We started in a conversation. He came back like a week later and accepted Christ, got baptized, then checked himself into drug treatment. And I talked to him just a couple months ago, and his life is still not straightened out, but at least we turned what could have been a bad situation into something where we could actually start a ministry process. And you plant the seeds, you can't guarantee that they're always going to take place, or grow, but at least it's in there, it's rattling around. And continue to pray for this guy Bruce, that he stays on a better path than he was on when we first met him.
That's the Lord's work right there.
There you go.
That's awesome. Could you speak?
Go ahead.
Could you speak to the medical training component as well? Because I also think that's another we get questions about, and I think that a lot of people taking a concealed carry class, unless it's brought up, don't even consider the the importance of having medical training.
Yeah, even if you're not a firearms person, you need medical on you
Right.
because you're far more likely to run into a situation where you're going to need to, stop somebody's traumatic bleeding. So every day I have one on my ankle, so I've got all the good tools in here that I need. So literally, I, I can't really remember a day where I haven't worn this unless I'm in a pool or something. But even hiking, it's so used to just having something on my ankle. I've waded across streams and then thought, oh crap, I had all my medical gear on my ankle. But
Hmm.
it's definitely very important. um, Saving a life, imagine you're pulling up to a car wreck and you check on people and someone's got a broken femur or blood's gushing out. That person has literally seconds to maybe a couple of minutes to live. And by
Hmm.
having the tools on your person and the training and having done some drills so that you can stay focused and do what's required, is just amazing. So for the last 6 or 7 years, I took a TCCC course, and now my youngest son, the one I mentioned that I kind of stepped away from the day-to-day church security stuff to help him. He's a trauma nurse in the ER in Tulsa, and so he called me one night, Dad, all this stuff, we trained and all these, fake gunshot wounds and the fake knife wounds and putting on the tourniquets. He said, yeah, that's what I do every day now. I just had a guy come to the yard, try to blow his face off or whatever with a shotgun. And so I've got a good resource, over the last several years now of, okay, from what we were taught to someone who deals with this every day.
Hmm.
But this was the kid who, even when he first got his driver's license, he had a full trauma kit in the trunk of his car in case he came across something. And then, so he's helped me see the importance of that. And just
Hmm.
another quick rollback. So my son Nathan, he's been off work for over a year now because somebody came into the ER that he had previously treated that was in a machete fight, and the guy left and then came back into the ER, and they said, Nathan, please come to the front desk. And Nathan came out, and the guy was very agitated. He goes, we've done what we can for you. You can't stay in the hospital. You need to go down to the shelter or the warming station or whatever. And the guy threw a bag down and came at Nathan and said, well, this is going to be a murder suicide.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so my son had to go hand to hand with this much larger individual and ended up in quite the scuffle, broke through the front sliding doors of the hospital and spilled outside, and just happened to have a couple of cops that drove through the parking lot as this nurse is on top of this guy. So he calls me at 1:30 in the morning. He goes, Dad, you remember all the hand-to-hand trading we did and how I get mad at you and I go to the car because you hurt me? And thank you so much for doing that, because I had to use every bit of this tonight to not just save my own life, but protect folks in the ER. But in the process, he hurt his back pretty severely and been through 3 surgeries now. So I have the flexibility to run to Oklahoma now and hang out with him to help him when needed. And hopefully he'll get back to work. But sad to see your 25-year-old having to walk with a cane because he did the right thing.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Yes, that definitely. Wow. Hey guys, I want to remind you that we're going to be doing a Q&A towards the end, which is actually coming up here pretty soon. So I want to encourage you, if you have any questions as we go along here, please put those in the comments. And we do see that there are some that we will be addressing during the Q&A session. So stick around and for the question, the Q&A answer, question and answer. I don't know why all of a sudden I just can't talk. Anyway, okay, so let's switch gears here for just a minute, John, because I know you have, told us about you going through the reason why you had to retire as a
Yep.
meteorologist. And I wanted to ask you about that because I wonder, I've seen you in a previous video talking about how you were forced to slow down, that you weren't able to do the things that you were used to doing or that you wanted to do because of this illness. And I'm just curious to know, how have you changed from that period of time when you were first diagnosed to now? Because what was that? How many years ago? 7 years ago was that?
Yeah, my last time on air was in September of 2016.
Mhm.
So basically, from college through my entire career was at one place, basically doing the same thing, meteorology. I absolutely loved it. I loved Doppler radar. I helped the TV station build 3 radar systems. I taught all over the United States teaching Doppler radar systems. Got to travel overseas and even to Barcelona to do an international presentation on radar systems. So I tell people, and this is absolutely the truth, there was not one day in more than 30 years that I did not look forward to going to work. It was never like, oh, I got to go to work. I loved what I did. I loved TV meteorology. I loved keeping people out of harm's way. But I started to develop a cough when I was at work. And it got to be annoying. In fact, people would go on social media, oh, it's coughing McLaughlin, and they'd make fun. And I had every test in the world done. I had, a little operation on my throat, and they're trying all these things to figure out what was happening. And finally, in May of 2015, it just got really bad where I could barely breathe when I was at work. And it's like, there's something going on here. And did the 5 o'clock news and couldn't make it even to the 6 o'clock news, ended up over in the ER. And they x-rayed my lungs and they said, well, we've got bad news. You either have pulmonary embolisms or you have lung cancer, and neither one are good. It's like, oh boy, well, that doesn't sound good. They said, so we're going to schedule you for a biopsy and see what happens. So they did the biopsy, and they came back in a couple of days and said, well, you don't have lung cancer, so that's good. And they're not pulmonary embolism, so that's good. But they said, do you live or work in an environment that has mold or water damage or anything? And it turned out that my lymph nodes and up into my lungs, all the spots they saw was basically fungus from years and years of breathing in mold through the ventilation and stuff. And so basically I had to walk away from a job I absolutely loved to save my life. And the doctor said, if you go back in there, you likely, the next time you come into ER, you may not make it through here, because I was down to like 37% lung capacity, something really horrible.
Oh my gosh.
So, but it was like severe weather season. And finally, after like 6 weeks, I was rehabbing, and I was actually, I was out of the building, was feeling better, lost a lot of weight, didn't look very good. But I talked my doctor, and at least let me come back at night. Let me just do the 10 o'clock news. And so he says, all right, well, if you wear a mask and, and just take it off before you do the weather. So I did, and I lasted 2 or 2.5 weeks, and back in the doctor's office again with the horrible cough and all that. So ended up very fortunate. Had to quit the TV job, which again I love. Went to the Cleveland Clinic and met a doctor in Ohio that had worked with the firefighters and the responders from the 9/11 disaster in New York. And she said, you're exactly what we're looking for. Someone that's had all these contaminants in the lungs. He goes, I know what to do. And they started giving me infusions of basically a rheumatoid arthritis drug called Remicade, which kills off your immune system. So if someone sneezed 6 blocks away, I'd get horribly sick. But it suppressed the immune system, let the body kind of heal. So it took about 2 years before I was to the point where I could do much of anything. But gradually it's gotten a little better and better. So I'm back to more of a normal life now. Still can't do the, TV at night, flying in the morning, teaching firearms on weekends. So I'm not that person anymore. But the physical part of that was horrible. Mindy, my gal, would drive me all over like I said, to doctor's appointments, and just really took care of me, basically quit her job to take care of me. But mentally it was like, God, this is what I did at TV meteorology. You gave me this gift. And at the time, one of the active self-protection guys, Sam Middlebrook with Red Hawk Firearms out at Yakima, he said, John, God doesn't use you because you're a meteorologist. God will use you where you are. And that was really profound. So I went to a conference in Omaha on church security with the FBSN and listened to Carl Chin and Colonel Grossman and Greg Stevens from the Garland, Texas shooting down there with the ISIS guys. And I actually physically, people will think this is weird, but it was like there was a tap, tap, tap on my shoulder. And I looked over my right shoulder and there was nobody there except for, people way behind me. And then I heard this voice said, John, you can do this. It's like, okay, I think I got the signal here, what I should be working on. So that's when I really, dug into the whole church security world. But I'm a driven person. People call me the type A personality and a type B body. So I'm not I'm driven all the time to set goals and accomplish goals. And if I get involved in something, I don't do it at a low level. So, when I was teaching firearms, I have to do it at an instructor level. If I'm going to be a pilot, I have to be at an instructor level. And so that's kind of how I looked at church security and the medical thing. Okay, I've got to go out and get some significant training, train with the same type of people that, you and Adam have been with, and get a good base that I can take and pull like the pieces that I think are most appropriate and structure that into training others. It's frozen on my end. Hopefully we're still going here.
I'm back on. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Whew.
I thought maybe you
Boy,
fell
that
asleep because I was
internet.
rattling on too much.
No, I wasn't falling asleep at all. No. That internet, man, it'll get you every time.
Yep. But through that whole time,
yeah.
That's when I got involved in the firearms, where the Iowa Firearms Coalition called and said, "Hey, would you consider being a board member?" And then kind of took the recognition I had from being on television in Iowa and helped parlay that into our message to all Iowans to vote in favor of the amendment in November. So when you look back at the big picture, getting out of TV, being able to use my voice for other things besides talking about the weather, you know,
He froze up on us again. He'll come back.
I'm back.
So, can you hear me, John? I swear it's not my internet, guys.
I just checked mine here, and I'm on Starlink, and it shows solid. But anyway,
so am I, but it apparently isn't.
Maybe we're talking about God too much, and the devil's not happy all of a sudden.
Who knows? Who knows? Well, I was just really curious though, because you mentioned that you were a type A personality, and I can attest to being that as well. If I were to come down with a life-threatening disease and had a career of 30 years, I'm not sure I would bounce back the way that you're describing. I mean, there had to be a period there where things were really tough. And were there any lessons that you learned? Like, are you the same person now as you were then? Or have you become a better person because of it? Was there a silver lining, I guess, is what I'm trying to decide here.
I think the silver lining is that you still have value. Right now, it's just a different audience. So I'm not serving, 100,000 people a night watching the 10 o'clock news anymore, but I'm, serving an audience that might be at a church that you're speaking to, or the audience that's watching a podcast like this, or taking a class with you. So, the message has changed, but, the bottom line is, we're here for such a time as this. And the most important things that we should be doing is, sharing our faith with people, sharing our love with them, and, teaching them to defend themselves on their darkest day.
Yeah, I think that ties in a little bit, slightly to the tidbit I was talking about how people identify themselves. What is your identity? And it could have been very easy for you to say, well, I'm a meteorologist and that's all I am. And once that's gone, what else is there? And you didn't do that.
No, I've always kind of been I never was in the military. I tried to get in after September 11th, and nobody wanted a 38-year-old with thousands of flight hours back then. I've always, been someone who has alternate plans. So I always thought, the TV business is a fickle business. I had a great run 30 years, but many people go to a station and a couple of years later, they get a new manager or new management takes over and they lose their job. So I always thought, well, I've got aviation I can do. I can teach the firearms. So I kind of did that all concurrently to have other options. I never thought for a while, all options would be taken off the table. But definitely having that warrior mindset, and that, you just have to kind of recreate yourself, and your value, as that Pastor Middlebrook said, is not in what you did, but who you are, and what do you believe about yourself. So to sit there. So as soon as I could start walking and getting active again. So the hardest thing is I still want to perform at the level I used to. Mm-hmm. And that is still a mental struggle. And people continue to tell me, like, slow down. You don't have to serve everybody as much as you did. Sit back and take it in a little bit. So that's hard to do, because I'm used to being on the go all the time. But I definitely can see from a health situation where not being as active can be beneficial in the long term.
I was watching one of your videos that you have on your YouTube channel, and one of my favorite quotes from that was you talked about the best instructors are eternal students, but then you
Right.
said after that, no one has ever arrived. And
Yep.
that is so true. I think everyone, a lot of people have these goals of, well, when I get to this, then I'll be happy, or when I have this or this success or whatever. And that's not how life works. You don't arrive and show up and then you're good enough, right? Or then it's all this built up nonsense, in my opinion. And of course, we always want to strive to be better. But when you said that no one has ever arrived, I thought that was really, really great.
Yeah, and really what I'm getting at there is, and this is good for everybody if you're looking for a self-defense instructor, humility is extremely important. If somebody's up there and they're going through their list of qualifications and they're telling you that they're the best there is and they'll never find anybody better, you need to walk away. You're looking for someone who has all the skills, but also has the humility to go along with it. So
Mm-hmm.
I would never want to tell anybody that, I know everything it is about aviation or weather or whatever. You have to be a humble servant. And that's just quite honestly what impressed me so much about Adam when I met him at the active self protection instructor courses. Here's a guy who's way more firearms experience than I'll ever had, but had that attitude of humility. And I was drawn to that, and several of the other people there. And through that whole course, really, that was one of the best things that came out of it was bonds with like-minded people that you can share experiences with. So yeah, Stay humble, keep moving. Never thought you've arrived. The day you think I know everything about everything, someone's going to sneak in that you didn't know about and take you out.
Yeah, that is true. In anything in life, really, that's how that works, I believe.
Yep.
All right. Is there anything before we wrap up here, John, that you want to make sure that people know? We put up the website about how people can find out more about Iowa Firearms Coalition.
Yeah, it's
before we get into the Q&A.
I would say one of the benefits of kind of being taken out of the weather world is, when I was in meteorology, I got to associate with absolutely the founders of the Doppler radar system, the NEXRAD system that's in all over. I got to work hand in hand with Les Lemon, who helped design that and train people all over the world, and the top scientists, And now as I've moved into the firearms teaching thing and meeting people like you and Greg Stevens from Texas and Stephen Williford and all these American heroes out there, it's like, how blessed am I to be a nobody firearms instructor from Iowa that is now, meeting real life heroes and interviewing them and shooting with them and practicing with them. Had a great gentleman we got to train with before he passed, Pat Rogers, just an insanely qualified person that just took me and my kids under his wing and helped us along in our firearms journey. So I, despite the problems with, moving from one career to the next, I just feel super blessed to be where I'm at. And if I had the opportunity to go back and not get sick and stay in TV, I would not do it. I'd want to be right where I am right now.
I love that.
Hey, John, can I jump in here?
Sure.
So I'm a fan of your weather app that people have, Storm Hunter WX.
Yep.
So is that something you can tell people about? I don't know if this is something still you're doing, but I truly appreciate this. The one thing I'm looking for is if there's a setting to turn it to dark mode, I'd love to do that. But can you tell people about this app? Because I think it's one of the best ones I've ever seen. In fact, I think it's the best one I've ever used. So you mind telling us about this? Because as people who defend life, it's important to know your weather stuff too.
Yeah, so what we did in that is I worked with a company called Barron Weather out of Huntsville, Alabama, one of the leading technology companies in the world with radar systems. And we built their first radar system with them, the TV station and I and Barron, back in 1996, serial number 001. So we designed algorithms to alert you to all these different threats. And when I left TV, I thought, how can we take some of this technology that we developed to keep the broadcast world safe and just give this away for free, basically, to the public? So that app is in conjunction with them. It's been through several iterations. It lets you put in multiple locations. And so, it's using algorithms, which can fail, and radar systems can fail. But if it sees rotation developing near you, it'll alert you on your phone that there's a twisting storm. There's lightning within 15 miles. It's going to alert you to that. So it's what we call a safety net. It's, if you're not staying aware of what's going on, let's say you're at the range a couple of years ago at the national conference in Kansas for active self-protection, people are asking me, how far is the lightning? I knew it already because I had it on the phone. We got people off the range in time. But the app is called Storm Hunter WX. That's just an abbreviation for weather. So if you go to the App Store or Android, you can download it. It's just a new version coming out on the Apple platform. And with all the different phones, we had to take away some of the mapping background. So that's why there's a light background right now, which I know I love the darker satellite images. So that was just a way to make it simplified to work on more different phone things. But that's in the list of trying to bring that back. But anyway, it's free. My brother owns a car dealership in Iowa called New Way Ford, so he sponsors that to make it free, so there's not being pummeled with ads and everything. But it's just a good backup. It'll keep track where you're at and let you know if there's a storm, or you can put all your relatives' locations in there, and it'll send you a note and say, hey, there's a tornado approaching your kid's house in Oklahoma. Make sure he knows about it.
Yeah, I travel all over the U.S. teaching, right? And I get notifications. I got one going through Oklahoma not too long ago, another one in Texas, another one oddly through Utah. And so it was really helpful to have. And I'm doing the same thing, putting my parents' stuff in here so I can kind of follow them too. So I thought that was important for people to know about that.
Yep.
Okay. It looks like Scott just now downloaded the app, and Scott, you're not going to get a better weather app. So fantastic, built by a genius. So
yeah,
thank you.
Yep, the Android version, we got an update that I need to get on the phone tomorrow and get out to fix a few bugs in that. But I think we're up to like 80,000 people using it now, so it's been pretty successful for a free weather app.
Word travels quickly when it's a good product. All right, let's get into a couple more questions here. I'm not sure who this is, but they want to know, what can a church security coordinator do to address CCW holders in the church who they may see as a possible problem in a critical incident?
So my philosophy on that is let your church members know that we have an armed security team, and we are more than happy to have you bring your concealed weapons into church, but please let us deal with it. And so even if we see someone coming that we don't know, and you can tell because they're printing because they've gained a little weight and their shirt's too tight, and you say, oh, that's looks like you're carrying a SIG 357. You can see it there. Anyway, just say, please keep it concealed. No problem. If there's someone rises, let us deal with it. If somebody's open carrying, we'll ask them to, we understand you can do that and we appreciate it. But, if you mind just covering that up, or maybe, lock it somewhere just so you don't get people riled up if they see someone walk in with a firearm. But, we approve of concealed carry, but we want to let folks know that, we've got people appropriately stationed in all the right places to intervene if the moment requires.
Okay. Another question. What would you say would be the next most important emergency medical courses to take if you have no professional medical background, but have taken basic first aid, CPR, and stop the bleed?
Okay. The next step after that, well, certainly CPR, learn about AED deployment. Everywhere I go in, I look, okay, where's the AED? And I usually have one with me in the vehicle just in case. It's good to have that. Stop the bleed is a good first step. They don't really get into chest seals. It's more just wound packing and tourniquets. So look for a course that, and Adam might want to recommend some, but there's several courses where you can actually go and do scenarios. Kerry Trainer does some, Dark Angel Medical. There's a bunch of different companies where you want to get your hands dirty, where you go into a setting, you're under stress. So that's what I do in my classes. The one we did a couple of years ago at Active Self-Protection, we bring people outside, and there's a body with glass and a knife and all kinds of stuff. And, you got the moulage blood there, and people actually get stressed up. I did a church training about a year ago in June, and, told people, when you go outside, you're going to see a scene. You got to do a quick evaluation, do your assessment, to figure out how you're going to work as a team to treat this person. And some people, one was a police officer, and they got so shook up by the fake scene that they saw that they literally could not function. But unless you put yourself under that stress, so it's more than just sitting in a classroom and putting a tourniquet on a foam gym roll or something like that to learn how to do it. Get into the classes where you can get your hands dirty. You got to go out and make assessments. And one thing I'm sure Adam would tell you is, if you have a scene for real, number one, take care of yourself. Number two, be prepared that they may have weapons. You may roll somebody over to take a look at them, and I have seen where people have had guns, have had knives, and you got to deal with that in addition to trying to take care of them. And getting into the drug world and Narcan and people coming back and wanting to fight and all that, that takes a higher level of training. But get to the classes like we mentioned where you can actually do hands-on. I know here in Arizona there's a company called Independence Training that has both 1 and 2 day options. We're actually going to have to go out and do scenarios after you've learned the basic skills.
Anything to add, Adam?
No, absolutely. You got to do that, right? The scenario stuff is absolutely necessary. Neil's talking about sites. Yeah, go to a site where you can do this within a church itself, and go to all the advanced training you possibly can. The more you can get your hands dirty and work through scenarios, the more training it is. And dealing with weapons, right? I've had a couple different cases as a law enforcement officer in churches and other places where all of a sudden there's a gun there with somebody, they're paraplegic, they're epileptic or something like that, and you've got to deal with that. That's something church security may need to consider and implement into their training.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, keep going, John. It's fine. We don't mind.
Yeah. So if you're on a church security team, the medical needs to be part of your plan. I've seen some churches that just like, oh, we're going to call 911. We're not going to do anything. Somebody can bleed out so fast, and it's probably not going to be from a gunshot or knife wound. It might be from the car wreck that's right on the corner of your church property. So take that very seriously. Move beyond Stop the Bleed. And if you're on a team or you're thinking about developing a team, set standards, set requalification both for your firearms and make people requalify on their medical too. So don't just make it one and done. Right. Make sure everybody's staying up on skills and bringing in more advanced folks than yourself to make sure you're up to date on. There may be new approved tourniquets by the TCCC that maybe weren't approved 2 years ago when you took your training. So stay up with everything. Mm-hmm. Getting back to that eternal student thing, just don't take what you learned and carry it forward. Keep training and keep your mind fresh on everything new.
Here's another question. In regards to the autoimmune disease, how do you manage the symptoms of the bad days when you're training or teaching on the range?
Yeah, with mine, I can feel it coming. And sometimes I'll just say, hey, I got to go sit down for a bit. But it's really about management and kind of understanding what your body can do. So I used to be able to work 18-hour days. And now the most I want to do in a day is about 5 to 6 hours. It used to be 2. So it's a lot better than it was. So I really have to structure my day around my best hours are going to be like a 5-hour time interval and structure what I do around that. But when I start feeling the symptoms of things coming on, like I'll feel pain in my joints and like a tingling, almost like an electrical shock, I just have to, whatever I'm doing at that time, I've just got to shut it down and go take a break.
Yeah, that's about knowing your limits and being honest about, how you're feeling that day, once again.
Yeah, I can tell you if you don't recognize those symptoms and try to push on, that's where problems can occur.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Anything else, Adam, before we wrap up here?
No, John, it's so good to see you. Thank you for coming. It's just an honor to be your friend, and 2, to be able to share your wisdom with everybody here.
I appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing, both in Colorado and down in Arizona. And thanks to all the folks up in Iowa that worked with us so diligently on our campaign for the Second Amendment. And we're staying in that fight. There's a lot of new issues, with the school, taking care of that situation. And someone I hope you can have on the show soon is Ed Monk. We had him up in Iowa about 10 days ago, and a fantastic presentation if you want to open people's eyes of the real answers to stopping these nut jobs that are going in and shooting up schools. It requires someone willing, someone present, and someone trained. There's no way around it.
Mm.
Yeah, Ed's good, man. I was happy to train with him last year. I'll be contacting him tomorrow. I'd love to get him on.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it so much.
All right. Well, I am going to wrap up here and let you guys know about who's going to be on next week. Boy, we have some good guests lined up for you guys. I'm so excited. I love coming into a live stream on a Wednesday and being all hyped up and excited to interview somebody new so you guys can get to know them. John was definitely one of those guests. And next week we have Chris Seipert from Citizens Defense Research. I don't know if any of you guys know Chris, but please stay tuned, because I believe that interview is going to be spectacular. I'm really looking forward to interviewing him. Chris is a retired Green Beret. He has vast medical training and experience, and he's a veteran of multiple deployments overseas. He is a certified firearms instructor through Rangemaster, and he draws from his vast experience to try to help lawfully armed citizens better protect themselves and their loved ones. I have already have questions in my mind written down, actually, of what I want to talk to Chris about. But I want to encourage you guys, if you have any questions for Chris as well, please email those to me at laura@defenders-usa.com. Laura is spelled Lora. And we're really looking forward to that. This interview with John tonight was exceptional as well. It was a really great one. So we appreciate him for coming on. We appreciate your time. Thank you for spending it with us on a Wednesday evening. We'll see you next week. Until then, take care.